This is Mike Schiano in the queue. In the Queue examines the development and integration of artificial intelligence in business, featuring insights from industry leaders, experts, and thinkers on the impact of AI on organizations and the workforce. AI represents a seismic change for businesses and especially workers around the world. Guests join me in the queue to share their thoughts, hopes, fears, and insights on the topics of business and AI. You are in the queue. We are excited to welcome Rahul Desai, founder and CEO of AI America, an AI training firm based in Cincinnati, Ohio. He's worked with and trained folks at some of the biggest companies in the world, folks. Microsoft, HubSpot, US Bank, Goldman Sachs, the list goes on. Rahul, welcome to the show and thank you for taking time to be with us.
Of course. Thank you for having me, Mike. It's great to be here.
Our pleasure. And you've got an upcoming book, The Invisible Advantage: How A-Players Navigate the Job Market in the Age of AI. Of course, very timely. You are on I guess, would you say you're on the edge of bringing AI to businesses and the world through your training company?
I certainly hope so. I wouldn't say I'm on the frontier in that I'm not a AI PhD or something like that. I'm not the one building the models at OpenAI or Anthropic or one of these companies. But I find that those companies are so far ahead of the average person that it's hard for people to understand what even is possible. And
Yeah.
so I find it very gratifying to be able to help, the average person, of which I relate more, I think, to the average person than to someone like Sam Altman.
Right.
Um, if I can help that average person figure out the ways in which their life can be enriched and improved by AI, I feel called to do that, and I hope I can.
So when you do training, when your company does training, AI America, who are you mainly training at this point in the process? Is it employees? Is it a combination of tech folks and non-tech? Who are you training?
Yeah, so typically it tends to be knowledge workers, so people who
Mhm.
spend most of their day working at a computer or at a desk. Typically, that can be pretty variable by industry. It could be anything from a marketing agency or a law firm or a real estate company. It could be the corporate folks at a, small local restaurant chain. Of course, it could be the strategy and ops people inside of large companies
Mhm.
like the ones you mentioned. So that can be really variable, but typically who I tend to work with is non-technical people, right? Not engineers, not data scientists, not, technical PhDs or something like that, but people like you and me who are trying
Mm.
to learn how AI fits into their daily workflow. So yes, I would say non-technical knowledge work is sort of the Venn diagram
Yeah.
of people.
Very interesting. What are you learning? Are you getting great acceptance across age ranges and careers? Are you seeing pockets of resistance out there as you train non-technical people? How does it look?
Yeah, so well, I certainly think there are people who are ready to retire who just don't want to
Mm.
bother to learn the new thing, and that's their prerogative, right?
Yeah.
If you're 1 year away from taking your retirement, I wouldn't really bother with learning something new necessarily. Conversely, there are a lot of people that are scared about their jobs, and
Mm.
often what they say or what I hear from their management is something like, we want to adopt AI. Our CEO set this mandate that we need to implement AI in ways X, Y, and Z by the end of, second quarter of next year. But we're having a really hard time doing change management. We can't get our frontline employees to uptake the AI, and when we ask them, or we talk to their direct managers, people say, well, oh, you're just implementing AI so that way AI can learn how to do my process or the thing that
Mm.
I do at my job and eventually automate me away entirely. And I would assert that's not an unreasonable fear, right? So
Right.
we've seen
Right.
all these rolling layoffs in the last 18 plus months at this juncture, and people have said, oh, well, we can get rid of 1,000 people because we
Mm.
can implement AI and achieve the same level of efficiency or even better without those people. I think and of course, all this stuff made the headlines. The biggest company was one called Klarna, which was it's a buy now, pay later company, and
Yeah.
they cut something like 3,000 people
Yep.
in an AI related layoff. The story that you don't hear, though, is that Klarna has since recanted their confidence on AI. They've had to
Mm.
rehire about 1,000 of those people. And the CEO basically came out and said, yeah, we thought AI was going to be extremely successful. And for any of a number of reasons, it did not have the outcomes or achievement we desired. So those are the fears I hear. But I think to some degree, they are, at least to date, they are misplaced.
Right. Maybe ahead of the curve because the promises are so great. And, a lot of parallels are made to when the internet was introduced and how it led to so many innovations and communication benefits for workers and individuals. But I don't know. I think this is different, Rahul, because this technology can do work, and people are seeing that, right? I think the average person, as you describe it, right? They're kind of training AI. I think people are training AI even in personal use as they put in queries and prompts. So I think, there's a tendency to lean towards, wow, this technology could replace us when you see the speed of the output and the quality of the output in many different areas, which we can get into.
Mhm.
Let's talk a second about the leaders that you touched on. So leadership, I can see where, especially in public companies, the responsibility is return on investment to shareholders.
Mhm.
So with human resources being such a, for most companies, the biggest cost,
Yep.
um, anything that can replace a percentage of human resources might be looked upon as something that they must do in order to return on investment. But for your experience working with leaders, and maybe not the C-suite, right, but maybe the mid-tier leaders who are ops leaders and hands-on every day,
Yeah.
what is the attitude you're seeing among them?
So it varies by company. I find some leaders are very excited to empower their staff to do more and better work by being equipped with AI.
Yeah,
I find that some people, on the other hand, are very excited to reduce some of their headcount burden and
sure.
extract that as profit, right? And
Mm,
I come from a private equity background. My wife also comes from private equity. And, you see that sentiment crop up a lot in those environments, largely because that is the core promise of private equity, right? We're going to buy a company, we're going to make it more
yep,
efficient, we'll do some financial engineering, and it will be more profitable and sell for a higher multiple in some years. And so I think, the private equity folks are eating this stuff up.
yep,
The thing that I'm hearing or I've heard a couple of opinions that have made me pause and really contemplate. One is, I believe this was Mark Andreessen from the venture capital fund Andreessen Horowitz. He said something like, AI is not going to replace you. A human using AI is going to replace you,
yes.
which in the near term, I generally believe is true.
Mm,
The other thing I heard was Aaron Levy, who's the founder and CEO of Box, right, big cloud storage company. He said he anticipates that AI will actually not make jobs evaporate or disappear, but that AI will enable people to get rid of really low quality work that they don't
yep.
like and to
Mhm.
do things that were previously unprofitable. And an example that I might give of that is, doing customer service to the level that the Ritz-Carlton, for example, does customer service. It requires really deep knowledge of your customer. It requires knowing, their likes, their dislikes, how often they stay, incidents they've had in the past, all that stuff. And the Ritz really separated their brand from the competition on that amazing level of customer service that they were able to give. It turns out with AI, being able to digest so much customer data. Maybe all of us can deliver that level of customer service in whatever business or industry we're in. And that historically would have been cost prohibitive, right? There
Yes.
wasn't a world in which your customer support rep could sit down for half an hour and figure out exactly how can I make Mike happy. And now with AI in 30 seconds, based on my CRM data, I'm sure I could figure out how to make Mike happy.
That's an excellent point. Rahul Desai, our guest, he's the founder and CEO of AI America. Now, Rahul's not just a training company, he is an operator. He has built and sold a business in 45 days and grown another by 40% annually. So this is a real world operator. When you think in terms of the ability to satisfy customers, you know from which you speak, Raul. So you're
Yes.
doing it
Yes.
in the real world, and of course you've got major companies as customers too. As we continue, and the quote you used, so people armed with AI, and that's really the positive way to look at it, right? That it's
Mhm.
going to be an additional tool in your arsenal in your career to help you compete and improve.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Right. I try, honestly, I find that people really worry about super intelligence or generalized intelligence, where AI really is as good at reasoning about most domains as a human.
Yeah.
I try not to bother myself about that, right? I have no control over whether that happens or not. I find it hard to reason about when it will happen. If you had
Mm,
asked me 10 years ago, are we going to have, functionally useful AI that can do human level quality outputs, I would have told you you were insane. And back in
right.
2013, I did found a machine learning company. We ended up going down the wrong path using one of the algorithms that has not proven to be highly successful. But back then, we were all in the dark, and no one knew that AI would work out. So I find that the people who are troubling themselves worrying about a 5 or a 10-year timeline are
Mm.
perhaps doing them a disservice by not focusing on what they can get done today.
There is a lot out there. If you're out on anywhere from YouTube to social media, with folks promoting AI as a way for individual contributors, small startup companies, that you hear everyone should be using an AI tool to build a small business. Is that being overdone right now? Do you think the promises that these folks are making to individuals, not necessarily to companies, might be overdone at this point in AI's growth?
So I generally find that if someone is selling you a pre-packaged course or template or toolkit online, the promise therein is probably somewhat overblown.
Hmm.
And I recognize this is ironic given that I run a training company. Um, but what we do is completely bespoke, right? It's a hybrid of consulting and training, right? We build curriculum for individual companies rather than boxing up something off the shelf. And what I wonder often when I meet these trainers who have something that's sort of off the shelf is why are you running a training company? Why are you not implementing the thing itself?
Right, right.
And of course, people may ask that about me, and I will get to the point here, which is that my wife and I run a small buyout fund ourselves. We buy travel companies, right? Group travel businesses that plan corporate offsites, women's trips, church trips, you name it. And so that business is now doing $1 million a year of revenue. We're planning to buy another one and bolt it on. But that business is run primarily by my wife, who works 30-ish hours a week on it, a virtual assistant who's offshore, and different AI setups that we've built. And
Yeah.
that's it, right? It takes one full-timer in America to run $1 million business at this juncture. So insofar as that is true, I think yes, you can get an enormous amount of stuff done with AI. Where I think people are going wrong is saying, oh, anyone can now build an incredible software company. Because it turns out the difficulty in building an incredible company is generally not the product. It is the ability to go to market, right? Is your marketing
Yes.
appropriate? Is your sales effort appropriate? Do you have the right network? Do you have the distribution? Do you have all of that stuff sorted and figured out? And I'll tell you, having started a relatively new company in the, AI America, that stuff is really hard, right?
Yeah,
It's the theoretically, I could have AI set up the curriculum, right? I could ingest survey data from the client company. I could have interview transcripts. I could go research or ingest, PDFs of textbooks and build really bespoke, incredible, detailed curriculum with AI. The difficult thing is getting the client to believe that we can do a good job training them according to their unique needs. And secondarily, it's being able to deal with the client in person in real life if something goes wrong, right? If a lesson is off
right.
base or if people are struggling to learn. That's not something that AI is really good at right now. So yes, I think there is something there, right? You can have a
Sure.
business that is materially assisted by AI, but I think it's not a silver bullet. And I think some of the
Yeah.
things that make running a company hard are still going to be there for sure.
Very interesting. You've helped companies automate tools, HR, compliance, finance. Is
Yes.
there one automation you think every founder should implement before they hire more employees to handle tasks?
So I'm going to give a more general framework because I
Yeah.
find that processes are actually fairly unique to each company.
Yeah.
So I think it's unfair to say, okay, this is the process to do, and it turns out your company doesn't even have that process. So
Right.
generally, the way I think about it is, do you even know what the processes in your company are? And
Mhm.
many people do not, right? Or at least not to the degree that AI could be helpful, or even non-AI flavors of automation could be helpful. Um, there was this course at Harvard called CS50, which is the introductory computer science class.
Mhm.
And it became really popular on edX and Coursera and all these online platforms. It was streamed on YouTube. And the opening lecture was always the professor saying, "Tell me how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich." And
Mhm.
people would say, "Well, get the bread, put the peanut butter on one side, put the jelly on the other side, make the sandwich." And it turns out the exact sequence to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is something like 100 steps long. It's, grasp bag of bread with one hand,
Ah.
untwist zip tie with other hand, remove top slice, place on plate. So much more
Mhm.
minute and complicated. And the thing that really messes up AI these days is having to make logical leaps, right? Often it can make a logical leap, but that leap will be in the wrong direction that you want it to go. It's like having a smart intern who doesn't
Mhm.
have a lot of great context about your business, right? They may have a lot of intellectual horsepower, but they still need the context and the training to be able to navigate your specific environment. And so the way that I try to instruct people to think about process is, how can you atomize this thing that you're doing, this workflow, this process, into the most minute little bit or step that you can have? Typically, I like to use three things that to do that. One is, can it be done in 30 minutes? Can it be done without a handoff to somebody else at your organization or a contractor or someone? And is it a single self-contained thought? Right? So theoretically, reviewing a contract, I might be able to get it done in 30 minutes, and I might be able to do it all on my own without someone's help. But is the entire review of a contract one single defined thought?
Mhm.
Probably not. There's probably multiple parts to it or multiple passes I need to make. So I find that if you can break your processes down to that degree, you can start collecting data, right? Where do people mess up? Where do they succeed? Which steps take 2 minutes and really should be automated? Which steps still take a full 30 minutes and require that human level of context setting, or, real thinking? And so I think once you have that atomized process that's really broken down, then you can start using workflow tools to automate some of this stuff out, right? The popular
Yeah.
ones tend to be like Zapier, N8N, Make.com. I've used all three of those. I'm really happy with all of them at
Yeah.
for different things, but you can get some really good quality out of workflow automation tools, but you need to know what exactly the workflow is.
It sounds like that would be a good practice for a company, AI or not, right? To get to
Hmm.
know your processes and get those lists down. I think a lot of companies operate without knowing that stuff. whether
Yes.
they're going to automate it or not. And it's probably good to know all of your roadblocks and areas. We try to look at those as like where does this end, and where can it be automated? Where can we improve how we get to that point, right? Because often when you get to that point, you find new ways of doing things that can really innovate and improve the way you do things, become more efficient.
Right. And one simple thing that I might recommend to people going down this path is you could open up Zoom, share your screen, record the way you do the process, and then
Mm.
send that transcript to AI and say, or the video and say, hey, what questions do you have about the way I did this process in order to get to these very atomic steps? Where do you think I could have done something better, right? And AI can actually be your thought partner to get you to the right level of depth on the way you do some of these things. So that's a really simple tactical answer of how people can get there. But yes, I generally agree that more
Yeah.
companies should do this.
Well, I can see why your training company is successful, Rahul. You have an ability to break this stuff down into a way you can understand it, whether you're a real tenured business person or just basic knowledge maybe early in your career. I get the sense that you enjoy explaining this and researching it and bringing it to people. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. It's very gratifying to see the light bulb moment, right? You see the shine in someone's eye when they really get it. They have that aha moment.
Yeah.
And I help companies be more efficient and make more money, of course, right? No one
Yes.
would hire me if that wasn't the case. But it's the little joy I get out of the individual interactions with students of, wow, you as a student came up with something that even I didn't think was possible. And that's what happens because we're at the frontier of this thing, right? And no one really knows where it's going to go. And so a lot of it is just play and trying things and experimenting. And so I've seen some people come up with really incredible things. Like I heard a case where someone used the tool Claude Code, which is really meant to be an engineering tool to write better and faster code, to create themselves a personal assistant that had all the context about their life. And this assistant can book them dates at restaurants and their flights and plan their day. And I had never seen someone use a programming tool for a decidedly non-programming use case like that. And I thought it was fascinating. So yes, I gain a lot of joy and gratification out of seeing people have those aha moments and then of course find that creativity that maybe they didn't feel was possible.
So exciting. Rahul Desai, our guest. You're working on a book, The Invisible Advantage: How A-Players Navigate the Job Market in the Age of AI. Is that going to come out soon? Is it a work in progress? Where are you with it?
Yeah, so that is getting published in April of next year, so
Awesome.
2026, depending on when
Yeah.
this podcast comes out. I have been laboriously editing it. I do that all by hand. There's no AI involved. Sadly, the US government, with regard to IP laws, will not yet accept AI written works as protected. So this is
Right.
all me.
Right.
But really, the book is what I've learned in terms of coaching people, because I've worked at learning and development businesses for the last few years now, not just my own business, but other businesses. Um, and a lot of the people that I trained in those prior environments reflected on how they were really struggling with the job market, especially since COVID.
Yes.
And so I think I talked to hundreds of people in that time. I also saw how people started using AI. And so the book is a little bit of theory about why the job market feels odd in this new AI world. Despite the fact that, the Fed will say, oh, unemployment is generally fine, or, the BLS will say something about labor statistics is generally okay. But people feel bad, right? People are not feeling great these days. And so the book talks about why that is, right? Why do people
Mhm.
feel badly about a market that is ostensibly doing quite well, especially if you look at Wall Street? Um, it then digs into the actual tactics of, okay, in a market that is getting flooded by AI written resumes, what can I do? Should
Yeah.
I use AI? To what degree? How? as a hiring manager who's gotten 1,000 applications in, because most jobs that pay six figures now get 1,000 apps in 1 week, how do I figure out which one of these people is going to be relevant? Because I have a real job. I can't read 1,000 pages of resumes in
Right.
1 week while I also have to prepare for my board meeting and make the CEO happy with regard to this or that. So the book really dives very deep into how do you write a great resume, a cover letter, a portfolio? How do you actually get your resume out there? How do you network appropriately? Once you're interviewing, how do you have a great interview? How do you do a case study or a take-home assignment? How do you negotiate for better salary? How do you navigate sort of the background check and the reference checks in order to start very successfully at a new job from the perspective of the job seeker? And then, of course, in every chapter, there's a little bit for the recruiter or the hiring manager. So it does really approach both sides of the table in that regard. So yeah, I hope it's helpful. I think it's quite timely, and I've seen the tactics that I've written about work, and that's why I wrote the book, because I noticed, hey, these people who are doing these things that we talk about seem to be doing really well. The people who are not doing those things seem to be really struggling. So let's get the message of the things that seem to be working to the people who are not doing those things.
Can't wait for the book. It sounds perfect. And as you say, timely. Absolutely. Rahul Desai, how can our listeners reach out to you, learn more about what you're doing, and get in contact with you if they want to?
Absolutely. So my website is aiamerica.co. That's the training company. It has a link to my calendar, so you can directly reach me there. I'm also on LinkedIn. My name is just Rahul Desai.
Perfect. We appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully, you won't be a stranger to the show. We'll have you on certainly when the book comes out, but maybe before then, if consider this an open invitation. If anything new happens in your world, we're excited to learn more. Rahul Desai, he is the founder and CEO of AI America. So glad you could join us on this episode.
All right. Thank you so much, Mike.
This episode of In the Queue was brought to you in part by freebirthday.com. If it's your birthday, everything should be free. Visit freebirthday.com today. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again soon on the next edition of In the Queue.